Hello, and welcome to the Box Office Babbler. I'm Babbling Ben. If you fear that your favorite sports franchise may move to a different city, today we'll discuss it using the film Major League for context. I will suggest some reforms for American sports that could keep your favorite sports team in town. First, let's talk about the movie. Major League is a sports comedy film that follows the underdog story of the Cleveland Indians, a struggling Major League Baseball team, much like the Cleveland Guardians of today. The team's new owner, Rachel Phelps, secretly wants to relocate the franchise to Miami, but can only do so if the team's attendance drops below a certain level. To ensure this, she assembles a group of misfit players, including Jake Taylor, played by Tom Berenger, an aging catcher with knee problems trying to reclaim his former glory. Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn, played by Charlie Sheen, a pitcher with a blazing fastball but zero control. Willie Mays Hayes, played by Wesley Snipes, a fast but cocky player who isn't good at hitting. And Pedro Serrano, played by Dennis Haysbert, a slugger with a penchant for voodoo who struggles to hit curveballs. Despite Phelps' sabotage, the team rallies around their shared frustration and gradually improves. With grit, humor, and a newfound sense of camaraderie, the Indians defy the odds and make a run for the playoffs. The film culminates in a dramatic final game that decides the team's fate. The movie is a hilarious and heartwarming tale about teamwork, determination, and proving people wrong. It remains a classic among baseball and comedy fans today. While we thank ChatGPT for the summary of the film, let's get to my take. Let's talk about my favorite character from the film, and that is team manager Lou Brown, portrayed by James Gammon. When I was in the Air Force and trying to figure out if I wanted to be an officer, it was a study for us. His leadership and calm demeanor, most of the time, his ability to take a team of has-beens and not yet to be's to the World Series was an example of qualities for discussion. There are a couple of scenes in the film where a player is in trouble, but rather than replace him, Brown says, "Let's see how he reacts," or "Let's see if he can work this out on his own." In many situations in the film, Brown shows he has a team's back. There are many times when Phelps makes things more difficult for the team, such as the purchase of an old team plane or a team bus. It is Brown who shows that he has a team's back, time and time again. It is Brown who figures out how to motivate the team. Many sports websites list Lou Brown as one of the best fictional sports coaches. The major plot point of the movie is that the owner wants to move the Cleveland Indians to Miami. Back when this movie came out, the Miami Marlins didn't exist. The relocation of sports franchises happens frequently here in North America, and there are several reasons for this. It's a rare thing to happen in Europe and around the world. So we'll talk about some reforms that could happen here in the United States that would prevent owners from moving sports teams. But first, a little bit of history. The National Football League has seen 7 different franchises move since the end of the Second World War, if you also count the American Football League teams. They have had 13 moves because the Raiders and Rams have moved 3 times each, and the Chargers and Cardinals have moved twice. This does not count the Saints' temporary relocation to San Antonio after Hurricane Katrina or other quasi-moves and mergers. Major League Baseball has seen 10 franchises relocate since the close of the Second World War. The Braves have moved twice. The Athletics will have moved 4 times in their history by the time they settle in their new home in Las Vegas, from Philadelphia to Kansas City to Oakland to Sacramento and Las Vegas. This will make 13 different moves in baseball since the war ended. This does not count the temporary relocation of the Toronto Blue Jays to Buffalo during COVID. The NBA is a king of franchise moves. They have seen 10 franchises relocate in its history, which began in 1946. Some of these moves have been from smaller towns to larger cities. The Pistons were originally in Fort Wayne. The Hawks were originally in the Tri-Cities area, now known as the Quad Cities area, which is up the river from St. Louis. This team is now in Atlanta, and St. Louis has been without an NBA team ever since. By the way, if you ask me, that is where the NBA needs to expand to, but they never ask me. Many teams have moved multiple times, like the Sacramento Kings started in Rochester, then went to Cincinnati, then to Kansas City, and finally to Sacramento. The NBA lists 21 moves if you do not count the temporary relocation of the New Orleans Hornets to Oklahoma City after Hurricane Katrina, or Toronto's COVID season in Tampa Bay. The National Hockey League is more stable than the other leagues. They have seen 9 franchises move since the original 6 era ended. 2 of those franchises have moved twice, or technically twice. The New Jersey Devils started in Kansas City, then stopped in Denver before moving to the East Coast. The original Winnipeg Jets spent 20 seasons in Arizona before finally moving to Salt Lake City. Technically, that was a franchise suspension and expansion, but it's still a move in my book. That is still only 11 moves. Major League Soccer has only seen 1 franchise move in their history. The original San Jose Earthquakes are now the Houston Dynamo. Major League Soccer has been more stable for a couple of reasons I will discuss later. In the United States, owners have moved teams for one of 3 reasons, or at least these are the reasons they cite. First, support in the community has dropped off. Second, the team is no longer profitable. And third, the inability to obtain modern facilities. I would add a 4th reason, and that is a loss of trust between ownership and the community. If you want a community to assist in building a modern facility using taxpayer dollars, a relationship of trust needs to exist between the team owners and the community. There are always going to be NIMBYs and those who do not want any taxpayer dollars building sports facilities. There are always going to be those who enthusiastically support it. Who you need to convince are the fence sitters. In 2 recent franchise moves, the A's to Las Vegas and the Coyotes to Salt Lake City, the main reason was because the ownership could not convince the fence sitters to support construction of new stadia. Let's talk a little bit about stadiums. One of the trends I have seen recently with stadiums is that long-term maintenance is not considered. The Arizona Diamondbacks are a good example of this. Their stadium, Chase Field, is less than 30 years old, but they have not been able to move the roof while fans are present out of fear that parts will fall off the structure and injure or even kill a fan. This should have been considered when the stadium was designed and built back in the 1990s. A sports stadium should last for at least 50 years, and very few have been designed to do this. Often, replacement stadiums are needed before the bonds issued to build them have been paid off. In European sport, franchise moves are rare if they happen at all at the top levels. Sure, team owners are more connected to their communities, but in Europe, there are some reforms that could work here that would provide more stability. I have 4 ideas that I think will help. The first idea is community ownership. The Green Bay Packers are an anomaly in North American sports. They're in the smallest city of any that has a major sports team in the United States. Why are they in Green Bay and not a larger city like Milwaukee? That's because the team is owned by stockholders, and the stockholders are also the season ticket holders. This is similar to how some leagues work in Europe. In Germany, it is not lawful for a single individual or entity to own more than 50% of the team. If there were more clubs in North America owned by the community rather than by wealthy individuals, franchise moves would be rare. The Green Bay Packers will never move out of Green Bay because their stockholders, community, or season ticket members will never approve it. Because the stockholders also own the stadium, they are going to ensure it is properly maintained, modern, and comfortable. It will also ensure that the engineering of the stadium is sustainable. The second idea is promotion and relegation. Another reason why sports moves are rare in Europe is promotion and relegation. For the American audience, this means that teams at lower levels have a chance to move up to a higher level if they perform well, and the poor performing teams at the higher level will move down to the lower levels. These are not minor leagues or player development leagues as we know them here. These lower level teams have their own player development systems. But let's pretend it worked the same way here, that AAA baseball was the next lowest level to the major leagues. As things stood at the end of 2024, the Chicago White Sox and Colorado Rockies, the teams with the worst records in baseball, would have been relegated to the International League and Pacific Coast League respectively, while the Columbus Clippers and Sugarland Space Cowboys would have been promoted to the majors. There are two reasons why I think promotion relegation has not been tried in the United States. First, it's something I have already alluded to. No community would attempt to lure a team from another city if the team they already had in their town had a chance to move up. The goal for improving facilities would not be for the purpose of luring a team from another town. The goal would be to build facilities to improve your chances at promotion. Las Vegas would not be building a new stadium for the Athletics. They would be building a new stadium for the Aviators to be competitive once promoted. The Oakland A's would not have pursued a stadium in Oakland to remain in Oakland, but to remain competitive and remain in the majors. Another reason is that if there were promotion relegation, there is a chance that another team in your market could move up and take away some of your fan base. Remember my baseball example. Sugarland is in the Houston area. If the Sugarland Space Cowboys were promoted to the American League to replace the White Sox, you would have two Houston area teams in baseball. Although Houston could probably support two top-level baseball teams, the Astros overall would probably not appreciate having market area competition for advertising dollars or for fans. The absence of promotion relegation is a form of market protection, but that could be avoided with my next idea. Third, more powerful governing boards. In Great Britain, the highest governing board is the Football Association. Although they are not all that powerful, they do have veto power over things like proposed rule changes. We have governing boards with American football, baseball, and basketball, but they are powerless and only govern international play. A real governing board would not have any team owners, but former players and coaches. They would provide guidance at all levels of sport. Their role is to help preserve the game, not necessarily to preserve owner profits. There would be few labor stoppages of play. They could be the arbitrary. A governing body could also help smooth things over at the lower levels. Perhaps a more powerful governing board would help the NCAA in its current realignment mess. Maybe the Pac-12 would still be intact. Fourth would be a European-style player development system. In European sports, clubs are responsible for their own player development. Schools at the high school level rarely have sports teams. Kids join a club at an early age, work their way from junior academies into senior teams. Athletes may not stay with the same club they began with their entire careers, but there are no drafts. The result is that communities are more closely tied to their clubs. Many fans have been following the players since they were kids. The clubs are much more invested in the community because they need it for their survival. Also, moving your franchise to a different city means moving your entire development system. It is much more expensive. More taxpayer dollars go to the owners of the major sports team here in the United States than most people realize. Think about how much money we spend for high school and college sports. Many colleges have to draw from student fees to fund athletics. We are in a student loan crisis. Why are kids borrowing money to pay for another student's tuition? With professional clubs footing the bill for player development, we could have a better education system as money that is now spent on sports teams could be used for other purposes. Could these reforms work in American sports? Some of them are already in place in Major League Soccer. There is a higher level governing board, US Soccer or Canada Soccer, and above them is CONCACAF. The clubs have a player development academies, or most of them do. There's still a college draft. There are still wealthy private owners. Promotion relegation is not yet a thing. However, with some of these reforms in place, you can count on one finger the number of franchises that have moved. If these reforms had been in place in the late 1980s, the entire plot of the movie Major League wouldn't have happened. Only the first part of the plot, where the trophy wife takes over the team after her husband dies. She can't move the team to Miami because it'd be too expensive. Their entire player development system is in Northern Ohio. Miami would have their own baseball team trying to get promoted to the majors. The Indians would not have been playing in a rundown stadium. Their players, most of them, would have been tied to the team since they were teenagers. The fans are more engaged because they have been fans of these players since they were teenagers. A more powerful governing board would not have approved the move to Miami and made the team owner honor her contract that the late husband signed with the city. That's all I have to say about Major League. This is my first baseball movie. Later, once baseball season is in full swing in April, I'll take on movies like The Natural, The Sandlot, Field of Dreams, and Bull Durham. I'm going to spend the next 4 episodes in the genre of science fiction, beginning with 2001: A Space Odyssey, one of my favorite movies. We'll discuss artificial intelligence. I will also talk about the first 2 Planet of the Apes films before talking about Interstellar, because there is a connection between Interstellar and apes. You'll see what I mean. Until next time, work on that control.